What's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. So today I'm going to be talking about the EDM B20a engine. So this engine is commonly found in the 1986 or 1989 Japanese and European market Honda Accords, the third generation Honda Accords, as well as the second generation and third gen Preludes. However, there's a lot of different mixes as far as the B20As go and the B21s and B18As. I'll discuss it. Basically, these are what is considered the bastard B series engine. Yes, it's a B series, but it has no relations at all to your commonly known B series engines, such as like the B20B, B20Z, commonly found in the Honda CRVs, or the B16 VTEC engine, or the B18 LS non-VTEC engine, or the B18 C1, the GSR, or the B18 Type R engine, or even the rare B17, which is found in the Type R second generation Acura Integra cars. Nothing to do with that. There's zero parts. Okay, now I'm not going to say zero. The majority of the parts of those engines will not fit on this, even though they are considered B series engines. So this is going to be somewhat of a huge detailed video. I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to name all the details, but I will leave links down in the description for you guys to follow to do your own research on. So hopefully this is a good guide to it. I haven't really seen too many people talking about this, and there's still people out there that think that because it has a B in the start of the name of this engine, that it correlates with all the other commonly known B series engines. So I'm going to tell you how they're not. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this as less confusing as I can. So the United States, US, we never got the B20As, the B18As here in the States. Japan and Europe and a few other countries, they received it. So for example, in Japan, for the third generation Honda Accord, or Aerodeck or Vigor, they received the A20s, the B18A, which is not the B18 you find in non-VTEC Integras here in the US. Not the same. And then the B20A. So those were drop-in the Accords in Japan and Europe. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. So I've been getting a lot of inquiries of like, hey, if I find a EDM B20a, would it be a straight drop-in into our US Accords? And the answer to that is, for the most part, yes. There's going to be a couple handful of things you're going to have to do and change to make it fit right and accommodate for different things to make it work and run. Here's my quick 2 cents on it. I believe it is not worth the money and effort to swap in that engine here in the US if you have a USDM Accord. Do what you want. Like, no judgment here. If that's what you really want to do, if you really want to make like 100% JDM car here in the US Accord, by all means go for it. I would never, after all this little things that I've researched on and the stuff that you have to do this, it's just, I would way rather spend the money and effort swapping in a K series or J series in this car rather than this. I mean, even back in the late 2000s, it was already kind of hard enough to find these engines, let alone finding transmission for these engines as well. Now, there is a trick to making the A series transmission work for the B20A engine, but that's a whole headache in itself. So, geez, how do all right. So the B20A in Japan was found in the 83 through 87 Honda Preludes and the 86 through 89 Honda Accord and Vigors. Now, if you guys never heard of the Vigors, they were kind of a strange car. They the first gen was kind of its own thing, and the second gen, I believe, was basically was the Accord that we got here. And then after that, the Vigor was kind of like rebadged to what we know here in the United States as like the Acura Legend, and then kind of became its own thing. And so, like, our Acura TL would be like, yeah, it's kind of confusing. I'll let you guys do your own research into that if you're interested. So they all got the B20As. They sit exactly like how you would commonly see any inline 4 Honda engine in most cars that you find here in the US. Now, from what was it, 90 to 91 Preludes here in the US for the Prelude SIs, if you ever popped open the engine of those things and you see them at this weird 18-degree lean towards the firewall. So Honda did that for lower center of gravity for better handling, as well as to accommodate the hood to sit lower. Believe it or not, if you ever looked at those old second and third generation Preludes, like that whole front end is super slick. It's super clean. So they literally dropped that engine and angled it so the hood would clear. It's pretty funny, but I mean, it's interesting that they chose to go through all that engineering just to make a hood fit. But hey, whatever, leave it up to Honda. So there are actually about like 10 different versions of the B20A. So you got the B20A and then B20A1 all the way through 9. And obviously each one of those different ones are found different places in the part of the world. Like B20A1, for example, is commonly found in like Europe. And then all the other ones are, you know, in my opinion, I think it's just like whatever Honda had to do to accommodate emission controls to whatever country those cars are going to be sent to, because they're for the majority of them, they're all dual overhead cams, 16 valve, utilizing the PGM-FI fuel injection intake system and whatnot. There is, I believe, 2 versions of it that were single overhead cam and used side draft carburetors. And then the power varies. For the most part, you're going to be seeing anywhere from like 137 horsepower with like 127 foot-pounds of torque, all the way up to like 160 horsepower with like 137 foot-pounds of torque. Like, so if I was to say just like between like 130, 160 is basically what you're going to get if you get a B20A. And mind you, that's not to the wheel either. So, I mean, it's not a bad engine. They are closed deck iron blocks. The B21s, however, that's found in the Prelude SIs here in the States, they are, I believe they're closed deck still, but they do not use iron sleeves. They use that FRM sleeves like some of the H series engines use, and I believe the F20C out of the S2000 use that fiber reinforced material, whatnot, which is a really strong material. But if you ever want to go like aftermarket with pistons or whatnot, you're kind of limited to what you can do, and machine shops are kind of limited to what they can do to FRM sleeved blocks. All right, so as far as transmissions goes, there was 2 types of transmissions for the B20As and the B18s. There was the B2K5 found in the 86 through 87 models, and from 88 through 89 there was the F2K5. Now the interesting thing about these transmissions are, for if you were to look for a rebuild kit or cross-reference serial numbers for certain parts like synchros or whatnot, they all cross-referenced for the A series transmission as well as the first generation Acura Integra ZC transmission. So any of you guys that have been following my YouTube channel may have seen me actually use a ZC half case with all the gears and whatnot, rebuilt it, threw on the A series bell housing onto it, and then slapped it back in the Accord behind me, and it works. So what I said earlier about you know, just the difficulty of trying to find and acquire a JDM B20A now, it was already somewhat difficult back in like the late 2000s. So a really huge task is going to be able to find the transmission for it. So here's the cool part. From what I've gathered, you can actually use your A series transmission or the first generation Acura Integra ZC transmission, but you're going to have to utilize the half case of them and then bolt it on to the B20A bell housing or the B18A bell housing. Again, B18A, not to be confused with the non-VTEC B18 found in the US in your non-VTEC Integras. So if you have the B20A bell housing or JDM B18A bell housing, you should be able to bolt it up to the half case of your A series or your first generation Acura Integra ZC half case, and you should be able to make it all work into your Accord, and I believe into your Prelude as well. All right, so I'm going to be covering about how to swap it into your USDM third generation Honda Accord. Now, I'm going to be missing a couple of steps. I've never done this myself. I've hardly ever talked to anybody who has done this swap. There's a handful of articles of how to and what's needed to make this swap work here in the US. Again, like, it is a lot more trouble than it's worth, in my opinion. Again, I won't stop if you do this. If you have done this swap here in the US, please give me some details. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you have any videos of it, please link it down. I'm sure, you know, I will enjoy it. I'm sure other people that really interested in doing a swap like this would be interested in it as well. So remember, the JDM B20A is basically, you can take it out of the JDM Accord and throw it into the USDM Accord engine bay. No problem. I believe the mounts are the same. The transmission mounts might be a little bit different. I could be wrong on that, but it has to be from the Accord in Japan. The problem is, if you were to pull a B20A, such as like the B20A5 or the B21 out of the Prelude, due to that weird 18-degree lean, in that Prelude, that engine will not sit right in the Accord without doing like a lot of fabrication or whatnot to make it all work. It just won't work. So let's talk about compatibility. Once that B20A, the JDM, is inside the Accord, the intake manifold from the A series, same bolt pattern. You can put all that stuff up from that PGM FI if you still have it on your A series and bolt it right up. If you want to make it carbureted, you guys can do that as well. Which also means, if you guys have been following my channel as well, you can also throw on a modified real B series intake manifold, such as ones found for, like, you know, your B16 intake manifolds, or your Type R manifolds, or your B18 non-VTEC manifolds. Obviously, they're going to have to be modified like I did to make mine work on my A20, but the bolt pattern for the intake side is exactly the same. A series B20A, exactly the same. For the exhaust manifold side, for the headers, it will not work. They're different. I have heard of, with modification, mind you, H22 headers working, but I've heard one step better than that are actually 90 through 94 Mitsubishi non-turbo Eclipse DSM headers. So I'm going to assume the non-turbo version of the 4G63 headers fit on the B20A JDM engine. So keep that in mind if you guys are going to try to figure out what you're going to use for the exhaust system. As far as like mix matching heads, so if you considered like, oh, okay, so if that works, maybe the B20 head will fit on the A series. Will not work. And obviously vice versa. VTEC heads will not work as well. You can utilize the same fuel system. I believe the ignition system as well. However, you're gonna have to rewire a couple things. I will link down a walkthrough on all the process on that. And that leads me next to the other thing. ECU. What are you going to do about the ECU? So I haven't really done a deep dive on this. So from what I've heard some people do to accommodate for the ECU, if you were to get a B20A from Japan and in your car, everything's good to go. All you need is to hook up the brain to turn it on. I've heard that the ECU from the B20A5 found in the Preludes will run it and will make it work. How true that is, I have no idea. Remember, you also have the option of converting this car or that engine to OBD1 as well, following similar steps for the A series. So just keep all that stuff in mind. So just to clarify again, B20A5, B21 found in the United States in the second, third generation Prelude will not work direct easy swap into the Accord. Oh, one more thing. The A series axles, believe it or not, should work. I believe, if I remember correctly though, the B20A transmissions did have an intermediate shaft, but I don't think that would play a factor once it's in the car. Don't take my word for it, but just from what I've read, the Accord, USDM Accord A20 axles should work. As far as alternators go, they should be the same. However, from what I've read, the pulleys are different and you may need to swap pulleys to make it work. Also keep in mind there is fuel injection and carbureted versions of the alternators and how the plugs work and whatnot. You can convert your 3-wire carbureted alternator to 4-wire for your fuel injected. I don't know exactly how. I know there's write-ups on it, so you guys can be on the lookout for that. If I find it, I'll link it down in the description below. Other than that, I'll not close out, but I'm gonna, if you guys are on the hunt for like a B20A, you're like dead set on trying to find one to swap into these cars, I'm gonna give you kind of the ones to like look out for based upon like power and whatnot. So on your top one, you have the JDM, Japanese specifically, gold top with 160 horsepower at 6,300 RPMs with 137 foot-pounds of torque at 5,000 RPMs. Second to that is going to be the black top, 145 horsepower at 6,200 RPMs and 127 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPMs. And then there's going to be the European, the EDM gold top. So this would be the B20A1, I believe, with 137 horsepower at 6,000 RPMs and 127 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPMs. And for here in the US, And Japan and Europe, there was a B20 A3 and A4. A3 we got here in the States, and that's the single overhead cam carbureted version, so the dual side draft carbureted version of it, and I believe it puts out somewhere around 100 horsepower on a good day. So the conclusion of the B20A engine, they are great engines. They're great for their time. I'll even argue and say they're even pretty great for somewhat modern times. They're a very stout engine. I think it's, in my opinion, I think its only downfall really is that we never got to see them to its full potential here in the United States. Like, I'm sure if they were over here, like if we got the JDM Gold Top and whatnot here in the United States in the Accords as an option like they did over in Japan, I'm sure there would be a lot of like 3Gs guys here that would have been swapping, you know, the B20s and swapping out the A20s and whatnot. There probably would have been a B20 versus A20 war or whatnot. But overall, it's a great engine. It's closed deck, just like the A series, has iron sleeves, just like the A series, 2-liter, just like the A series. You know, there's also, you know, more somewhat modern parts that are compatible with it if modified right. Let's see, 941 compression, 81 millimeter bore, 95 millimeter stroke, and then again B21 is up to just 83 millimeter. But I mean, like, yeah, they're great stout engines. It's just unfortunately just the aftermarket support for them, just like the A series, you know, there really wasn't for it. And since like we never got them in the States, like I'm sure if we got them in the US, I'm sure everybody would have known like distinctly the difference between them and like their great, you know, their potential and whatnot. But it's just one of those things to where like if you were going to swap one here in the US, in my personal opinion, it would just be like, you know, you are definitely one of those old school, like you are like that Honda guru that like, you know, all the things that even like most Honda, I don't want to say fanboys, but I mean, that's the only thing that comes to mind right now, you know, like it would take them by surprise, not only by like just the model name of it, its origins of it, but, you know, just like even the capabilities of it and the build quality of it. All right, I'm gonna wrap this video up with a couple of highlights. So the only B20s we got here in the US were found in the 1987 through 1991 Honda Preludes, the B20A3, which was the 12-valve single overhead cam carbureted model. Then there was the fuel-injected model, the B20A5. And then for the SI models from 90 to 91, there was the B21A. So the A series and the B20As share the same intake manifold bolt patterns. The fuel system should be similarly the same. Ignition system should work with some slight modifications. A series and B20A series headers and exhaust manifolds like are not compatible. H22 as well as 90 to 94 Mitsubishi Eclipse non-turbo headers should work with some slight modifications for the B20As to work. There was 2 versions of the B20A transmissions, so the 86 through 87 there was the B2K5 transmission, and then from 88 through 89 there was the F2K5 transmission. The bell housing for the B20A should bolt onto the A series and the first generation Acura Integra ZC half case with accommodating gears and should work. And that's pretty much about it. Again, none of the B20As or B21s in the US is a direct swap, a direct bolt-in to the 1986 through 1989 Honda Accords. They will not. Any B20A that has the 18-degree lean towards the firewall will not be a drop-in swap into your 3rd generation Honda Accord. So again, I'm not the B20 expert. This was a huge new learning curve for me as far as this engine goes. Again, this is like the weird bastard engine that Honda made. If you guys have any questions, ask me down in the comments below. If you have more to add, please add it down in the comments below if I was wrong on something, or add more to it. So for any B20A or B18A enthusiasts out there that want to know more information on it, they can see it right there. I will leave links down in the description below for you guys to do more of a deep dive to find what I found and maybe go further than what I went to. So you guys can also hit me up on questions on my Instagram, Asian_sensation. I'll do my best to answer them when I can and as fast as I can, the best way I can. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.